1, 2, is this on? Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite game companies, Mayfair Games. Mayfair sold the last of its assets to Asmodee Editions in 2018, and it was sad. I had, up to that point, found very few games they produced that I didn't enjoy. I was willing to buy into a new game from them faster than any other company, simply because I recognized the quality of everything else they had produced. Mayfair was founded in 1981 by Darwin Bromley to publish the game he and co creator Bill Fawcett designed, Empire Builder. My first experience with Empire Builder was admittedly bad. The people who taught me the game did not follow the rules as written, and I've sort of talked about my feelings on rules on this channel already. But I didn't encounter Empire Builder until the late 90s. My first experience with Mayfair was with their Advanced Dungeons and Dragons compatible line of Roll Aids, a role playing game supplement and adventure modules that they published starting in 1982. These products featured a notification on the cover clearly establishing that while they were designed to be compatible with AD&D, they were not developed by nor sanctioned by TSR. At one point, Gary Gygax did encourage TSR to license Advanced Dungeons and Dragons to Mayfair and make the Roll Aids line official, but he was outvoted. This was, to my knowledge, the first of a long, long line of financial mistakes that Dungeons and Dragons has made over the decades in regard to licensing their intellectual properties, no matter what company has owned them. In 1985, Mayfair released the DC Heroes role playing game to compete with TSR's Marvel Superheroes role playing game, which was released in '84. Both DC and Marvel had recognized the crossover interest among fans of comic books and role playing games, and they each chose what company to partner with. This just showing how big Mayfair was at the time. I do remember in the mid 90s when Mayfair moved away from role playing games and went all in on board games, that they were selling their backstock at 80% off. I bought 3 to 5 of everything that they had for the comic book store I was managing at the time, Hometown Comics, intending to put them next to the DC rack at 50% off. The owner of the store took down the 50% off sign, however, and then complained when none of the books sold. I still think they would have sold out if we'd have kept the discount, and we were still getting a decent profit off of each book if they had. It actually wasn't until the early 2000s that I was taught the proper way to play Empire Builder. But my first wife, Amy, had been a fan of Iron Dragon, but I hadn't really gotten into it at the time. But by 2003, I was obsessed with the whole Empire Builder line of games, including Euro Rails, India Rails, Australia Rails. I even helped playtest China Rails with my friend Pat when that game was still in development. Interestingly enough, my current wife, Misty's favorite rail game is also Iron Dragon. Other games Mayfair produced that I've fully enjoyed and still play include Bang, Settlers of Catan, Chill. I don't really play Chill anymore, but I put it on the list. The Downfall of Pompeii, and Xanth. Settlers of Catan was sold to Asmodee in 2016 when the CEO of Mayfair, Pete Finlan, left to be the CEO of the newly developed company Catan Studio, which was a subsidiary of Asmodee. Chill was sold in 2012 and I believe is now in its third edition. That's published by Growing Door Games. I don't know what became of Bang as a property. As a concept, this was actually the start of many social deduction games, such as Mafia, Are You a Werewolf, and others. I do know that a huge box set called Bang Dynamite Box Collector's Edition came out in 2023 from Da Vinci Games. It was only in Europe and it sold for 99.9 euros. But I don't know if they just have reprint rights or if maybe they own the property now. Now, Xanth was a licensed game based on the first 9 novels in the Xanth Fantasy series by Piers Anthony. They were published by Del Rey Books from 1977 to 1986. This is a pun heavy board game and has some rather unique game mechanics to it, including double sided cards and a sandbox like open board. For a time in the 90s, my roleplay group would play a round of Xanth if we wrapped up the role playing session early. And the Downfall of Pompeii also has some unique aspects, such as the ability to sacrifice your opponent's pieces to appease the volcano, and 3 distinct phases of gameplay that include building up the city and then later evacuating once the volcano erupts. The less you build, the easier to evacuate, but the fewer points you have the potential to earn. And the Empire Builder line is also unofficially known as Crayon Rail Games or just Rail Games. That's because the primary mechanic of play is to draw your train's track with crayons on the board. And then the term Rail Games comes from the fact that most of them have the word rail in the title. As I mentioned, Euro Rails, India Rails, British Rails, you get the idea. These games are now owned by co creator Darwin Bromley's family, and they are being reproduced by Darwin Games. They've made some interesting changes to the game and are producing new maps for the line. I should mention there is an unofficial, non licensed video game version of the Crayon Rail games. I'm not going to link it because it's non licensed, but I bought it back in the mid 2000s for $175. The game does have the Mayfair logo on it, but I spoke to one of the Darwin Games people at Origins last month and was assured there is no and has never been a connection between Darwin Bromley and the people making this game. There's also a game on Steam that is licensed, but I haven't played it yet, so I don't feel comfortable endorsing it. I do know the reviews criticize its lack of an ability to play versus the computer rather than with just other people who have also bought the game. I was actually shocked when Mayfair sold out to Asmodee. I thought they were one of the biggest of the non traditional game companies, basically, one of the biggest that hadn't been bought by Hasbro. I have to assume the decision to close the doors was a personal or maybe a corporate decision, not a financial one. What's your favorite game company? I mean, regardless of what kind of game, role playing, board games, card games, whatever, just let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll talk about them, give them a spotlight in a future video.